Jonathan Merkel, thank you for being part of this. We Love Guitar Nerds.
Thank you.
Today, who we're gonna check out is a guitar player, metalhead, jazz guy, composer, guitar sensei. You've done a lot of stuff. You build guitar effects, and you've done tons of stuff in your life, and we want to get your story. So thanks for being here.
Sure, thank you.
So how you doing now?
Doing good.
Yeah.
Still mostly just doing music for TV and film. Teach well, I should say TV and film placements. I teach 2-3 days a week guitar, and that's mainly all I'm doing now. I was building effects for a couple different companies.
Who were these companies?
A long time ago, I worked for Full Tone, and that was from 2000 to 2006. And then I worked for Exotic from 2006 to 2016. And in between there, I worked for Royer Labs, and that's the same company as Mojave Audio. It's not really the same thing, but Mojave Audio is a sister company. And then I worked for a really cool company for a short time called Overstayer Musical Effects. And that was, I don't know if you heard of the band God Lives Underwater, but it's Jeff Terzo from that band. Okay. They're from PA, actually.
All right.
And they were kind of a 90s band, kind of like maybe like Nine Inch Nails, that kind of vibe. And so he lives in LA, and I worked for him for about 1.5 years. And he makes really unique preamps and compressors. So I worked for him for a while when I lived out there.
Okay, that's wonderful. When did you move back? So I moved out to LA like in the early 2000s?
No, I moved out to LA in the fall of 1995.
Okay.
And I stayed there until the very end of 2012.
All right.
So 17 years.
All right. Well,
yeah.
How'd you get your start in music? Go back to the way back.
Would have been with you. So Stephen Nicholas Music in
Ottery Hill, York, PA.
In 1990.
Yeah.
And I remember I played trumpet for a short time, but I was horrible, and I didn't think I'd ever do anything with music. And I just had this weird urge in high school that I wanted to play guitar. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but
Iron Maiden was calling you.
Yeah, I was definitely into them. And so my dad took me to a couple music stores, and we were looking at guitars. And I remember you were there, and you told me to buy a used Les Paul, which was a great decision because it didn't look like the guitars I wanted to buy at the time, but I still have that guitar actually. And I just had Jeff Hofstetter redo the pickups on it, and it's
what kind of
it's
pickups
still playing.
You put in it?
I put Seymour Duncan Antiquity pickups, so they look exactly like the originals, but they sound much they sound better in my opinion. The other ones were still working, but they were showing their age a little bit. So so yeah, still have that guitar. So anyway, yeah, I was taking guitar lessons with you, and then for some reason, I think it was a Metallica article. They were talking about how they wrote all these. They would have these riff tapes that they would base their albums off of.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so cool. So I bought a Fostex 4-track recorder probably in 1991, 1992. And that wasn't enough, so I needed something else to play with. So probably at Stephen Nicholas Music, I bought a what was it, the Boss Dr. Rhythm drum machine. Yeah. So and so that was super complicated compared to today. And you couldn't take the batteries out of the back or you'd erase the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love that drum machine.
It was a great drum machine. Yeah. And so I would just I would put together like little tracks, and they would be 1 or 2, maybe 2.5 minutes long, which is ironic because that's exactly what I do today.
Yes. Well, they always say that play has deeper implications.
Right.
When you're playing, like the kitten that plays with the ball is also training himself to kill a mouse or something like that. You know what I mean? So play does what you do for fun can, in your case, manifest itself into great stuff.
So I continued that for a while, and then I went to art school for 2 years, and the whole time I was at art school, I kept making these tracks and just messing around. I had no intention of doing anything with recording. I didn't even consider it an option. And then I think I came back for a couple months, took guitar lessons with you again. And then I moved out to Los Angeles in the fall of 1995 and started there. I started the degree program there. Still didn't really do much with recording, but I still had the 4-track. And at that time, I think I had a QY20 or a QY22, something, that was a little more advanced. And I just kept writing these tracks. And I can't say I saved them. I didn't do anything with them. I don't know if I even have the tapes anymore. Yeah. But it certainly led to things later on.
Yeah. So so GIT Musicians Institute in the mid 90s, how was that experience for you?
That was really interesting. I really liked it there. I went there at a time where it was changing over, and it was kind of a sad time in a sense, because some of the great players that were there, like Joe DiOrio and Ron Eshtay, all wound up leaving about 2 years later in 1997. So I got to experience the very end of what that was
like. Of the golden years of that school.
Yes. And some of the guys, like Don Mock, he was already gone.
Really?
By the time I got there. Yeah, I don't know when he left, but it's kind of sad to miss him. He was a great guitar player.
He was the he and Howard Roberts were kind of the founders of that.
Yes.
That's cool.
And there was a few of those guys still there, but they were mostly gone around 1997. But there were still great players there, obviously. I mean, there was Scott Henderson and just so many great teachers that were there. So I was just going to do the 2-year program, but I wound up staying for the 4-year program. And that it was great. Especially when the bachelor program was very young when I was there. But what was cool was when we started getting into the bachelor's program, we had to take arranging classes. And they would bring in real horn players and real strings, and you had to learn to write for them. And I remember our teacher, even at the time, even though there was encore and early versions of Finale, and I don't think there was Sibelius, but there was definitely Finale and encore. He would make you write them by hand. So you would have to do all the transpositions by hand. And even though that was a nightmare at the time, that you'll never forget where those things transpose to once you have to do that. That was really cool. And that's still something that every now and then it'll come up. I'll put horns on something, and you have to put something in their key, and it's very very useful.
You took classes from Berkeley for something like that too, right?
That was much later. I was considering going to Berkeley in 1997 to finish my bachelor's degree, and I went up there and I checked it out, and I just didn't want to make the move.
You made the right choice.
But I'm sure it was great. It was such a cool vibe there too. I didn't choose that ultimately. Later on in 2013, I did do a Berkeley class online, and it was for orchestration. And it was really good. It was actually I don't know if I'm saying her name right, Pinar Toprak.
I have no idea.
Butchering that name. But she was a great teacher, and she's now, I doubt she's doing that anymore. She scored a couple pretty decent movies. I took the classes because I was not too confident with writing for orchestra, and I just wanted to
sharpen your skills.
Kind of a refresher. Ongoing,
continual learning.
And it was great. I thought their classes were very good. They're pricey, they are not cheap, but they're worth it, you know, and very good structure. It's a great school.
Okay, so back to you got the 4-year college. Who are some of your teachers? You did study with Joe Diorio, did you not?
I didn't really study with him. No, I would sit in his open counseling and things, and go to it. He would have classes and things. He was never my private teacher. My first private teacher there was a guy named Steve Dudas, who's great, and just didn't appreciate it at the time, because I didn't know that, he wrote for Ozzy he has a song on an Ozzy Osbourne album. And you just don't really, it's not really, I don't know, nobody really talked about it. But he was great. Jamie Finley was my teacher for a while after that.
Classical
really
guy, right?
He's more acoustic jazz, but he can play classical. Sure.
It was a finger style.
He's a big finger style guy. And then Dan Gilbert for a while. He's really a very organized teacher, fantastic player. And there was a few others. But at MI, you could just go around and go to people's open counselings too, and just, it was such a great place. There was so much, there was so much going on, you couldn't possibly soak it all up. There was no way.
I interviewed Tobias Hurwitz, which is the Baltimore guitar guru guy. And he went there in the 80s, and he said that you would walk through the hallways and Joe Pass is sitting there playing songs.
Unfortunately, he had already died by the time I went there, but I knew a few guys that went there in the 80s. And there was that.
That's magical. I can only imagine, because Joe Pass, and as you know, that's been somebody in my musical upbringing that changed things for me.
Absolutely. And the other guy that was there a lot in the 80s was Jocko was there a lot in the 80s. I don't know how much, but I know there's definitely concerts on YouTube with him at MI, and Frank Mbali was there, and
Paul Gilbert, obviously.
Paul Gilbert. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those places that was
synergy.
Yeah, there was a lot going on there for sure.
A lot of jazz guys there, but also it was rock guys too.
Yeah.
Because that's what separates kind of like East Coast and West Coast. Berkeley was kind of a jazz school that would cater to the whims of rock musicians every once in a while.
Sure.
Musicians Institute was we're not even playing. Rock is okay.
Right.
It wasn't.
Right.
Yeah. So you graduated there. Then what happened?
I graduated, and at the time, the alumni programs weren't all that strong there. Now they're much better. So you kind of just kicked out there, and good luck. And I was already a teacher's assistant there, working there a little bit. And even though that didn't pay very much, that was a great experience, because every week I would do this drummer named Chuck Flores. I would do his class weekly, and he was another just legend, great drummer. And I did his class for about 4 years after.
Okay.
But I was playing in cover bands and playing some jazz gigs, and had a part-time job as well. I think Full Tone came up around 2000. I graduated in 99.
Okay.
Full Tone was kind of like a work from home job. And I just wasn't fulfilled. I'm not sure what it was. I wasn't happy with doing live gigs. It wasn't terrible, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I was supposed to do, I guess.
I understand that.
So it continued on where I started recording books, or not books, but like in a Hal Leonard book, they have a CD at the end. And I did a couple of those for an author named Jean-Marc Belcotti, and
slap guitar guy.
and much more. He's actually he was my teacher for a while after, and he is really a great teacher.
Yeah.
And he's a great player. He's just fantastic. He can play so many things. And he was the guy who said to me in 2003, he looked at all these tracks I had, and he said, "Why aren't you doing music for TV and film?" And I said, I don't know what that means. I don't want to score movies. And he said, "You don't have to score movies." He said, "You just do tracks that are 2 to 3 minutes long, and you get them to these people, and they'll place them in shows for you." And I had no idea what he was, I had no idea. So I started researching it, and that's what I decided I was going to do. And
that's kind of like the birth of Beat Chamber.
That came a little bit later. So I decided that's what I was going to do, and it's really interesting how that all came about. I was in a pretty bad marriage, and in 2004, my current business partner, Danny Osuna, approached me and said, "You got all these tracks." He had way more tracks, because he'd been doing this for another company in Los Angeles since the late 90s. He was an intern at a place that did Latin music.
Yeah.
He said, "You've got all these tracks. I've got tons more tracks. Why don't we combine them and start a music library?" And that was when it hit me. It was like God came down and told me,
this is what you're meant to do.
this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
It was so clear and powerful.
Mhm.
And I remember I went home, I told my now ex-wife, and she was completely not happy about this. And she told me that she gave me an ultimatum. It was either I stay in the marriage with her or I start a company and do music for TV and film, which sounds ridiculous.
How did that turn out?
Well, I said that I made one of the smartest choices I ever made. I said, we need to see a therapist. And we went and saw a therapist. And based on what we both told her, the therapist told me to leave because it was a disaster, and I won't get into it all. But I did. I left. I got the hell out of there.
Yeah.
And that was how it started.
Okay.
Beat Chamber, basically.
Yeah.
So we didn't even come up with a name for about a year. We were just kind of putting tracks together.
Mhm.
And then I'd say the fall of 2005 was where we had the name, we had the website, just very, very basic started. Yep. And I had gotten like a little library gig at the time, writing music for Oprah, Dr. Phil, and the Oxygen Network. And that was a bad deal. That was bad, but it forced me to come up with about 40 tracks very quickly.
How was it a bad deal?
They took all of the writers' credit. All of the writers' credit was owned by them. They owned all of the publishing, and they were supposed to pay us half of the publishing. But it didn't go to my publishing entity at ASCAP. They controlled it, which meant that when they would get their ASCAP or BMI statements, they would have to add up the numbers. So you're basically signing up with this private company that you're trusting that they're always going to pay out what they're supposed to. And I don't know. I'm sure they didn't. I'm not going to say too much about it.
That's how Oprah's a billionaire.
No, this actually had nothing to do with Oprah.
Okay.
This had now that's interesting, but this was a music library that they would try to say things like that.
Yeah.
But it had nothing to do with her whatsoever. It was a music library that had a couple of us signed up in this just abusive deal. Okay. But again,
it was experience.
It was an experience, and it wasn't a big deal. I think I had 3 tracks on the show until I realized this is terrible, and I didn't have to sign. It was kind of a good thing because you could sign one thing at a time, and so I took the other 37 tracks and kept them. And after that, I think I was working at Royer Labs, and there was a guy there who had a studio, and he started hiring me to do little commercials. I did a few on my own. Danny and I did a few for him. And it's really a long time ago, but we did like a little commercial trailer for The Shield, for an old movie called Mr. Brooks. There was some stuff for Sony Blu-ray, and it was cool. That was probably the first stuff that the first placements.
Okay.
And then Danny and I also had about 100 to 200 instrumental tracks, and then those started. We got those to a music. I don't know if it was I guess it was a library. We got them to a music library that doesn't exist anymore. It was a good library, and I think some of the first placements there were Keeping Up with the Kardashians,
okay,
and we had a DVD at the time, and we would send it out to just music supervisors. And I would say around 2008, 2009, I can't remember exactly when, the music supervisor for Burn Notice called us. And that led to, I think we had, in the end, we had 24 tracks and songs on Burn Notice,
Yes.
which was a great show.
Oh, yeah.
Love that show.
Yeah.
And it's still in syndication. And that was
Okay,
that
syndication, do you still get payment for syndicated?
Yes. Every single time any of those shows air, no matter where,
Okay.
We get royalties.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course that depends on the deal, but that was a very open deal where we made that deal ourselves, and so we fully controlled the publishing and everything.
That's wonderful.
And so we still we still do that. We still get calls for those things, and then there's other situations we work with other companies that have connections that we don't have.
Yeah. Yep.
So sorry, that was a long rant,
that's great. The road to
that was how it all
Beat
started.
Chamber. The road to Beat Chamber. How did you learn to do all that stuff? Just by trial by fire?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, at a certain point, I knew I had to, I would say around 2004, I knew I had to upgrade my my speakers. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
And actually the speakers you see behind me, they were this isn't the exact pair, but these are the same ones I started off with.
Okay.
These are KRK V8s.
Yep.
And these are the series ones. These I started with the series 2. So yeah, I knew how to program and do a little bit of stuff from school. But yeah, I learned, I mean, mixing, it was trial and error. And also just working with people at Royer Labs, I could ask them questions because there was lots of people there that were really good engineers. And so you could show them the mixes.
There again, synergy. You're putting yourself in a place that helps with growth.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, my business partner Danny, he's a great mixer. He would offer advice and things. So just took a couple years, and it was kind of a different situation back then. The quality expectations of music in 2005, not that you couldn't turn in anything horrible, but it didn't have to be mixed and mastered like today. Today there's no like messing around. If you can't, if it's not going to be really, really good, it's like you almost have to go to somebody and have it mixed and mastered, because it's a lot of things have changed in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of them.
So you said John Mark. We don't want to forget some of the stuff that you've done with John Mark.
Sure.
So he wrote many books.
He wrote many books.
What would you say that your involvement of these books were?
I would record the audio CDs that went in the back. So I would record him, edit the tracks, and then I would do a little bit of work in the books. I would do the notation with certain things, and I did 3 books. There was a classical book. There was the slap book, which was pretty crazy, because that was hard because
You're probably inventing notation.
We had to come up with something and agree on it for that book.
Yeah.
And then there was another one called the Composite Blues Scale, and that was cool. It was basically like George Benson kind of
Okay.
stuff. And I think I just did the notation on that one.
Okay.
So it was just those 3 books.
Yeah.
I never did that ever for anybody else after that. That was where it started and ended. And it was great. It was very, very tedious editing. And the only other time I've done editing at that level was a couple years ago with Cal Weary, when we did an audio book. And that was very crazy, just because there was so much recorded material, and you'd have to go back, and I'm sure there was a better way to do it. It was the first time I'd ever done that. But you'd have to go back and find any mistakes and take them out and make sure it ran smooth through there. And but it turned out great. I mean, he did such a great job, great narrator. And but it was
that's his thing. We're all jealous of his ability to his spoken voice is he's a virtuoso kind of thing. He was great. That was just a very intense editing project, but he knocked it out of the park. That was a lot of fun. So where's Beat Chamber now?
Well, around there was a couple interesting things that happened. I think one of the things that were really things changed for the better was in 2008. And I told my business partner Danny, I said, we need to take this class at UCLA Extension called Music Supervision. And the guy who taught it was a guy named Thomas Golovich, who is the music supervisor for Breaking Bad, and Better Call Saul, and all these other just really great shows. And I don't know if he ever taught it again. Breaking Bad was in its had its first season, and it wasn't a hit yet. It had a cult following, and it was just about to just explode. And so he was working on the second season when we were taking the class. It was so worth it. He had all these guests in there all the time, and just to get that perspective on things. And we wound up making a few relationships in that class that still are there to this day, very strong, with music supervisors and people that shop our music. And like I said, had we not done that, we wouldn't have met a couple people that have, just helped us immensely. And had we done it a year later, I'm not sure he taught the class a year later. So I would say he probably didn't, although I don't know that for sure. And he was a very cool guy.
Was that why you were still out in California?
Yes.
We were virtual then.
That's right. We were still building things at that point. We were starting to do a lot more music with vocals at the time, like just full songs. So that kept developing. We got little, we would get placements. The Burn Notice thing continued till 2013. Let's see, there was some movies in there, some other shows. And in 2012, my parents were both having health problems. So I decided to move back to Pennsylvania. And it was very clear at that point too, that we weren't really meeting people in person so much. We had enough credits where we could just go to other companies or whatever, or even go to some conferences, which we still do every now and then, and meet some people. So it didn't really, I guess what I'm saying is I didn't need to stay in LA
In
anymore
order
at
to
that
do,
time.
yeah.
So I moved back at the very end of 2012, and I just set
Can't
up
believe
my
it's like
studio
almost 9
here,
years.
and
You've been back
yeah,
almost
it's
9
been a
years.
while.
That's
Yeah.
bizarre.
Yeah. And even at the time, Exotic, who I worked for at the time part-time, they sent me my work for quite a while, till 2016. So I kept that going, and just working on Beat Chamber. And at that time too, there was an interesting transition happening. We noticed that Latin music was starting to really work out for us.
Mhm.
And hip hop too. We've had some good placements with that, but especially Latin music. So there was a transition in there where I, who had never done any of that before,
Mhm.
had to learn, and um, and that paid off big time, because
Yeah.
with licensing, when you write a song, it generally doesn't place right away.
Yeah.
It could take years for anything to happen. So at that time, I was just started building up all these songs, and then just at a certain point, the dam sort of breaks,
Yeah.
and you just start getting all these placements, with music that you wrote a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so that's the interesting thing about it. So anytime we do a project, we know this probably isn't going to see the light of day for at least 6 months, and
Yeah.
that's pretty optimistic. I would
Mhm.
say it's more like a year,
This
and
brings us
depending on the
to,
style,
yeah.
sure.
This brings us to our you invited me down to your studio because of Burn Notice. Because
Right.
Burn Notice, this is our little story. Burn Notice was taking in heavy metal, and they were taking in Latin music. Okay, so you said let's mix it up. Let's do something. So I came down. You put a drum track down. I jammed to it. We came up with some beats. Tell us that story.
Yeah, so at the time, Burn Notice was in its final season.
Mm-hmm.
So we were going to give them some tracks for I think it was maybe the 7th season. So I had you come down, and we co-wrote three songs,
Mm-hmm.
and I got them once they were all finished up. I had sent them off, but they didn't get used for Burn Notice, which is
What you
typical.
just said, it's like sometimes it takes years for things to make it
Sometimes
like,
it takes years.
yeah.
So I wound up giving those tracks to another music library, and all of a sudden we started getting placements on Ozzy and Jack's World Detour,
Mm-hmm.
and I think one or two of the songs you and I did were
Mm-hmm.
on there.
Yeah.
And what year was that? That was like 2017. So it took 4 years in that case,
Yeah.
for those to start seeing anything.
So ladies and gentlemen, my first national release with Jonathan Merkel was for Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm being
So
funny. I'm being
yeah,
funny,
so
but that's kind of cool.
it is cool. And what's interesting too is those tracks can still place at any time. That's typical of a reality show or that type of a show, that I guess you call it a non-scripted show. Those usually, they're a slightly different deal than other types of shows. Usually they don't have an upfront payment, so it's called a gratis placement. So you'll find out about that usually 9 to 12 months after the fact, when you get your royalty statement.
Mm-hmm.
Usually with stuff with vocals that has an upfront payment, or a sync fee, usually you'll find out about that right, like maybe a week or two before, so
Okay.
you can announce it on social media or whatever.
Mhm.
But sometimes even some of those will slip through, and you'll find out about a placement far more down the road.
Yeah.
It just depends. It depends on who you're working with and what their policies are. It all depends.
Yeah. But thank you for that opportunity, though. Seriously. So that was,
Oh yeah, no, thank you. It was great. That was
yeah,
those are three cool songs, and you know, at some point, hopefully they'll place
again,
again.
yeah.
We'll see.
So that it's not just an Aussie thing, but yeah, you can reinstate it in other instances. So you're
Yes,
doing,
that
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that's the cool thing, is unless you sign some kind of a buyout contract, the same song can place many times. And we've had that happen. We
Yeah.
have certain songs that consistently place over the years.
Mhm.
Um, two or
What's
three times is good,
what kind of music is
but
it?
I would say there's um I would say the majority is Latin,
Okay.
is Latin based stuff. Um, but we have a few hip hop songs too that consistently place. They'll have four or
I
five
saw you did one with Dylan
licenses and
Madsen.
different.
I saw,
Yes,
yeah,
that was just in Shameless.
yeah.
Um, in December. It was on the season, what do they call it? The opener? I don't even
Okay.
know. The season premiere.
Okay.
That was on there. That was cool. Yeah, he's a great rapper, and we did I did two songs with him,
Mhm.
and yeah, one of them just happened to place in Shameless, which is cool because I never had a song on there before,
Yeah.
and that's a
Shameless is, what is it
great.
on? Is that like Netflix or
I think that's a Showtime show.
okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't have much TV either, so um, but yeah, I think my wife had Hulu for like a trial, so
Okay.
somehow through Hulu I was able to watch the first episode of that season
Okay.
and make sure. Another thing too is sometimes you'll get a thing about a placement and it'll get cut. So we usually try to confirm for sure that they're there first,
Yeah.
before we say anything.
Yeah.
You never know. Sometimes it gets cut and somebody doesn't get the message right away. So
Yeah. Yep. So you're teaching now too. You went back to teaching.
I went back to teaching. I'd always had a couple students,
Mhm.
throughout things. I started teaching in 1997. Um, and then I taught at different places around LA, just little stores. And I kind of stopped in 2006. I kept some private students. Um, and when I stopped working with Exotic in 2016, um, I I decided, okay, I'm going to go back to teaching.
Mhm.
And so I started teaching at Music and Arts in Bel Air, Maryland, and still there. Um, that's good. And I teach in Redline too at the Guitar Spot,
Yeah.
and that's
Chad
a,
Ward.
yep, and that's a great store.
Wonderful.
And of course after the pandemic too, I teach a little bit online as well. So I have a couple online students, a day at Red Lion and a day in Bel Air.
What do
And
what do you base some of your what are your thoughts on teaching? Like what do you emphasize? What do you like to give to your students? What kind of
well well I like you, and I mean, you must have so much material from all the years. but I just started with, kind of trial and error of what I thought would work. And I try to get people playing chords and things right away. Um, Try to learn an easy song or two, maybe power chords.
Mhm.
So I came up with a couple things that seem to work for beginners.
Yeah.
And then sometimes too, you'll get other students. And of course, this, you'll get students that bring you things you've never heard of that
Oh
they
yeah.
want to learn. And there's no transcription of some of these things. So you'll have to figure them out. And
Yeah.
since 2016, I've just accumulated this pretty huge database of either
How do you do that? How do you
they're
write?
just every it seems like every week I have at least one or two things I have to write out for people. So when I write, I'll do it ahead of time. I'll do it the night before, and
Mhm.
then I scan everything so I'll have it for later. um
Okay, so you
I
literally write it out.
Some of it, yes. And also there's like Sheet Music Direct, they have pretty good transcriptions.
Okay.
If I need something, and you know I don't sit here and try to figure everything out. um and then there's students that just are trying to learn things in a certain direction, so I'll just go through what I have at home, maybe scan things from books, maybe write something out,
Mhm.
whatever I think will help them. And then I'll take that in
Yeah.
to the lessons.
Mhm.
So usually every Wednesday and Thursday I have a small stack of papers, and it's just things I've printed out for people.
Mhm.
And and yeah, I've learned things like I'm not a big country music guy at all, but I've learned a fair amount of
Being
that
from
from
Stewartstown?
yeah. I never was into country music. But now now I have to figure it out.
Yeah.
So which is great. So it's taught me to, it's forced me to do some things that I just hadn't done before.
Outside of your wheelhouse.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you.
Sure.
This was wonderful. In the description, what we're going to do is we're going to include what we might also include if there's any online things for the. I got Beat Chamber. I got your Beat Chamber website. I got your Beat Chamber on Facebook.
Okay.
I have jonathanmerkel.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And then that is it for now. But thank you for this. And
Sure.
what is there anything anybody can do to better themselves in what you do? What would be your advice?
I would say it's a very different scene that it was in 2005 as far
Mhm.
as licensing. Um, but I've seen a few people there's a female rapper we work with, um, and I have seen she started maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and she, she just everything is excuse me, sorry about that. I got a call coming and I had to
Okay.
decline it. Um, I was saying her career has just exploded just recently with placements.
Okay.
So it still can happen. It's just it's a little bit different now. What I don't know what I guess my general advice for somebody who's starting off is definitely learn to play an instrument. I see a lot of people that can't play either piano or guitar, and I think that's so important,
Mhm.
to learn one of those
Yeah.
instruments just to understand things a little bit. And then with all the resources on YouTube these days, you really can, there's free access to just great stuff.
Yeah.
Also, another thing, and I kind of hate to say this, but I've had to tell a few people to be careful with going to extremely expensive music schools, because
I've said the same.
yeah, it's unfortunate. You don't want to have to tell people that, but these places are just, 50, 60,000 a year, and you're just not gonna meet those. I don't know how you're gonna pay that off as a musician. So I would say definitely to take advantage of the free resources on YouTube and many of the other places. And even there's many little courses for $200, $300, $400.
Yes.
Or
Even,
like
you said, even your expensive Berkeley course
yes,
wasn't $80,000.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So there's things like that you should definitely take advantage of. And also, I would say don't try to do too many things.
Mm-hmm.
Try to pick a direction and stick with it.
Yeah.
Which that will, I think that's some of the best advice I could give anybody. There's definitely ways to learn how to mix. There's definitely ways to even learn guitar and things, or piano online. You won't have to, or community colleges too.
Yeah.
Anything like that is good.
Well, what I say, study with somebody who's going to take you where you want to go,
Or
and
that.
learn marketing.
Yes.
And learn marketing.
Yeah.
If you want to be a professional musician, hone your craft, whatever your craft is, hone it and learn marketing.
Yes.
Learn marketing.
Yes.
Because it's like it's about that. And you don't have to go to a $40,000 a year job or college to get there.
Yeah, and also, that's exactly right. I don't know if you need to move to like Los Angeles or New York anymore to start a music career. I see other people doing it from other places. So it is a different world. And you're right.
Virtual world too.
Exactly. Yeah. Marketing and it is just so important.
Yes.
So, and also the other advice I'd have too is don't just do one or two things and then wait for something to happen. Just constantly do new music.
Make your own opportunities.
And exactly. Just put it all out there, and eventually something will happen. It could take a year or two, but if you're consistently putting things out there, something will eventually happen with some of it, And there's other people too I know that have been doing the same thing for years and years and years, and it doesn't work. And if that happens, you have to stop. You have to have the humility to stop and, okay, what's wrong here? And I know one guy, and of course I'm not going to say his name, but he's a great musician, and he has a good product, but he's got one ingredient that's just, I don't know, it's just bizarre, and it just doesn't work. And but he won't listen to anybody. So it's like the music is not, I don't even know I honestly don't even know who he's doing it for at this point. It can't license this way. It can't get on the radio this way. And if he would just, take other people's advice, it would, or something would happen. So, that's, you have to have that too. You have to know when it's not working, and you have to stop yourself and like you said, reevaluate,
reinvent.
Yes, absolutely.
So, well, thank you again.
You're welcome.
And
you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
We should talk more off screen too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just give me a call, man. Anytime.
Alrighty.
I'm around.
Yes, yeah. Alrighty. See you then.
Okay. You have a good day. See you soon.
Bye.